And the problem right now is that we have just finished half-term and hundreds, potentially thousands, I don't know whether you know the specific number, of children, teachers and other families will have come back from skiing trips in precisely those regions. Not the particular towns which are in lockdown, but in the regions around those towns, Lombardy, Veneto. Do you know how many people have been on skiing trips, have come back and are showing symptoms?
No, we don't know the number of people who've been on skiing trips. Obviously, that's a significant number, as you say. Our advice is clear that if you've been to that area of northern Italy, and it's a line north of, but not including Pisa, Florence and Rimini, and then you develop symptoms of cough, fever or shortness of breath, then it's really important that you phone NHS 111 and you self-isolate as you do so. And we can then take things from there. Of course, people are concerned. All I would say is that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we identify anybody with the coronavirus who returns to the UK, because at the moment, it's still well worthwhile to do everything that we can to contain and delay any spread of this infection in the UK.
Professor, you mentioned symptoms. The difficulty is at this time of year, a lot of people get coughs and colds and fevers. Is it really clear,
of course,
when you get the symptoms of coronavirus that you have something that is different to the regular?
Well, not necessarily, and the answer to that is, our advice has to be, if you've been to one of the places of concern and you've got symptoms that you're worried about, phone NHS 111. They can take you through their algorithms that will help to be clear whether you need further assessment and testing, and then we can make sure that that testing is arranged for.
What about masks? We've seen a lot of people wearing masks around the world. Are they effective? Should people be thinking about that?
Yes, we don't recommend face masks in general. Face masks can be effective if you've got the infection and to reduce spread. But, of course, if you've got infection, then our advice is clear that you should self-isolate whilst you seek advice as to what that infection might be if you've been to one of the countries of concern. It is important, of course, to remember that we all have a part to play in this. Whatever may or may not be coming to us, it's really important that if we've got symptoms, coughs, colds, sneezes, but particularly in this case, cough, shortness of breath and fever, that we do stay at home, we self-isolate, we don't spread it to other people. Our message about catch it, bin it, kill it, if you cough or sneeze, use a tissue, throw that tissue away, wash your hands, those things are things that we all should be doing. We all should be doing them all of the time, of course, but particularly at the moment, that's important for us.
So can I just establish, because the self-isolation advice is obviously extremely good advice. It's just that for some people, if you've got to work and you think, actually, I've probably just got a cold, I can plough on through. Are we really asking people to take 2 weeks sick leave, if you're freelance, may not be financially compensated for that, and stay at home if actually you don't have coronavirus?
So the advice is specific to coronavirus. If you've been to one of the places of concern, northern Italy or the countries in Southeast Asia that we've talked about, and you have symptoms, then you need to phone NHS 111. They will help you to know whether you need to be assessed and tested. And, of course, if you test positive, then you need to be isolated.
But, of course, if you test positive, I completely understand that. What I'm trying to establish is if you've come back and you think maybe it's just a cold, and you have been in, northern Italy, you've come back from one of the ski trips, for instance, are you definitely supposed to self-isolate if you have a sniffle?
If you have been to one of the countries of concern, and that includes the area of northern Italy that I've just mentioned, and you have a cough, fever or shortness of breath, then you need to self-isolate and phone NHS 111. I know that can be difficult for people, but this is like any other health problem where you may need to take a little bit of time to get things sorted out and make sure that all are clear whether you do have the coronavirus or not. We're not advising, if you have no symptoms at all, to self-isolate unless you've been in one of those specific towns which is under lockdown, or the same advice applies if you've returned from Iran or from Hubei province in China. And there's a couple of specific areas in South Korea that you'll know about as well. So it's important to make that distinction. But if you have been to one of those areas of concern and have symptoms, then you do need to phone 111 and take their advice.
The Sun says it has seen official papers setting out a doomsday scenario. It's a document by the National Security Communications Team. It's called COVID-19 Reasonable Worst Case Scenario, warning 4 in 5 Brits could become infected. Up to 500,000 could be killed. More than 50 million in the UK could catch the virus, with more than 2 million in hospital. A government spokesman apparently told the Sun newspaper every eventuality had to be planned for, but this does not mean we expect it to happen. I mean, it's a terrifying scenario as a reasonable worst case, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, you would expect us to be planning for a whole range of different scenarios. It's very difficult to speculate on exactly what might happen. And the fact that we've got a reasonable worst-case scenario does not mean that we expect that necessarily to happen. But of course, the country, the NHS, the government is preparing for a range of different scenarios, of which the reasonable worst-case scenario has to be one. But we're an awfully long way from that being the case. And it's really difficult to know exactly how this will develop over coming weeks and months. The important thing is that we understand what the different things that could happen are, and that we prepare as best as we're able to for them.